Welcome. Last week we started a Lenten practice that we're going to do in worship, having someone from the congregation just share their faith story, their spiritual journey. And we started with Jennifer Kears. I think she's out in Graceland right now. And today, Dee. I'm going to invite Dee Glover to come up. Dee is captain of the property team that kind of takes care of this building. He does a lot of things, and he is going to share a little bit about that. Dee, I don't know if that works for you. Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I recently was asked to guest speak at the Women of Wellington group. And I mentioned to them that that was the first time that anybody in this church had actually asked me to present to them. And obviously they didn't talk to Orville because they asked me back again today. If I had to describe my faith journey, I think as a song title, it would have to be The Long and Winding Road by Lennon and McCartney. I've actually been coming to Wellington Square since 1993 on a weekly basis, although it took another 13 years for me to attend my first church service. See, I was actually the scout leader here, and I'd show up every week, but I never actually came to and participated in a service. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Quebec, and I was baptized Anglican, as my father had been, but my father never went to church, so my mother, shortly after I was probably 5 or 6, pulled us out. There was 3 of us, and we went to the Presbyterian church in the small town we were in. And one thing that I started doing then that I continue to this day is I always sat in the front row. And I did that because at the church at the time I was going to, the pulpit was up so high that the minister couldn't see us in the front row. So he'd look right past us. I assure you, Orville, that's not why I sit in the front row today. I want to hear every word. By the time I became a teenager, I'd basically stopped going to church. I became what they call a CEO Christian, Christmas and Easter only. And for those, and then later on, when I went to university, for you wrestling fans, I became a WWF Christian. I'd only go to church if it was a wedding, a wake, or a funeral. When I married my wife, Carol, who was nice enough to join us here today, I don't know how many Hail Marys you'll have to say for going to a Protestant church, but I briefly returned to church in deference to my wife and to my in-laws, who were very devout Catholics. Our 2 boys were baptized and confirmed in the Catholic Church, but I stopped attending church with them really in the 1990s. Honestly, at the time, I don't even know if I believed in God. Although a good friend of mine mentioned to me this weekend that I had confessed to him and a group of other people a couple of years ago that it wasn't so much that I didn't believe in God, is that I didn't really think I needed God. You know, I had a pretty blessed life. I didn't think there was any need for him. But over the last 25 years, there's been some things that have happened that have caused me to stop and be more introspective. One thing I remember very clearly is in the 1980s, I was watching some talk show. Maybe it was the Carson Show, I don't know. But they were talking about the good work that Jerry Lewis was doing with the telethon and how much money he had raised a particular Labor Day weekend. And there was somebody in the panel that pointed out, he says, you know what, there's a young fellow up in Canada that's raised more money, just in Canada than Jerry Lewis did in all of the United States. And that was, Terry Fox. And that showed me the power that one person could have in changing the lives of so many. Fast forward 20 years, the tsunami of 2004 had a profound effect on me. That showed me the power of the world and what it could do to help people, because I think that was so devastating that so many people were affected by it, that it really affected me. And then the final thing was in 2006, a member of this church, a good friend, a colleague with scouting, invited me to a mission down to Mexico. And that had a very profound change on me. That showed the power of a small group and what they could do in changing the lives of people. So it was then that I realized how superficial my views toward life had been and how much more God wanted for me if I would just take the time to listen. It caused me to reevaluate my priorities and to nudge me down a path of increased generosity and service. But what really sealed the deal for me was the people I met through Wellington Square and at Wellington Square. Never have I been associated with a group of people who are so focused on helping others. Through the spiritual leadership of Orville and Katie, I gained new insight into the importance of having Jesus in my life as a friend and guide. I'm a naturally skeptical person, although I prefer to call myself questioning. I always try to seek out the underlying truth. The leadership at Wellington Square always were open to my questions and doubts. I never felt judged or unwelcome because of my questions. What I realized, though, a few years ago is that regardless of all the apparent contradictions between the stories in the Bible and established science, the message of Jesus' love transcends all of these. The blueprint he gave us by the example he led is all that is really important. So after my first church service at Wellington Square in 2006, I answered an altar call in San Diego in November of 2004 and declared Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I don't know what God has in store for me in the future, and I can't say that I still don't have doubts about certain aspects of my faith. But I do know that right now I'm at the right place at Wellington Square. Nothing can be more comforting than being surrounded by friends who love you for who you are in the present, not for what you've done in the past.